Hello and welcome to the Conscious Club podcast. My name is Areege Tanveer Chaudhary and I am your host that welcomes you through this wondrous journey of exploring what it's like to be a human being on planet Earth at this time of rapid evolutionary change. Because if you haven't noticed already, humanity is going through an up level, whether it's through technology or whether it's through just an organic evolution of our consciousness. We are heading into a completely new era, and through this podcast, I talk about it. So if that interests you, keep listening and enjoy the ride. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Conscious Club podcast. I brought Luna in for the intro. She's such a baby. Okay, so in this little intro, I love her so much. I am introing this podcast episode that I did with one of my really good friends and sisters, Anja / your mirror / the real Earth Mama on Instagram. And as you can tell by my energy right now, by how I am feeling, like this was such a good one. Like, oh, it was so yummy. Like, yummy is the word. And it just hit on all of those. It hit deep. It's a deep one. We go deep into so many things, but really, let me try to center it. The core theme I would describe this podcast episode is around embodiment and being embodied in our humanness, in our bodies. And a phrase to really sum up this episode is freedom lives in the body. And so what we end up talking about is spirituality and the nuances of like disassociative spirituality versus embodied spirituality. We talk about social media. We talk about disembodied self-expression online versus embodied self-expression online. And that naturally bridges into this conversation about embodied use of technology versus disembodied use of technology. And we speak a little on the different future projections for our collective reality that we still have the potential to experience based on whether we are here and present in our humanness, here and present with our somatic sensations and our intuitive knowingness when we utilize these upcoming technological advancements, or when we're engaging with these upcoming technological advancements that are coming. So we're talking about automation, AI, things like that. We're talking about what the world and what society can look like when we're engaging with that stuff from an embodied, sovereign, knowing place, like when we're tuned into our innate power, versus what that world can look like if we're disembodied and governed by forces that we are not actually fully connected to personally. And yeah, I feel like my energy right now says it all. I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation. I don't think I need to explain anything else. I love you so much, and I will see you inside. Woo! Yay, I'm so excited for you to hear this. And also, please let me know how this conversation landed with you, because I want to know if you feel the same vibe at the end of it as I do, as how I'm feeling right now. Yeah, okay. I love you. See you inside. All right. Hey, welcome, Anja, to the Conscious Club podcast.
Hey.
Also, you're launching a podcast soon, and I feel like they're sister podcasts because the vibes are like similar but different, but they feel like they
Mm,
touch on the same topics from two different perspectives. And
yes.
it's like, of course.
Yes. Yes. I love it. I love it. And you're absolutely I'm obviously going to ask you to be a guest on my podcast as well. And I'm so excited for both of our journeys. This is so exciting for both of us.
Yeah, I mean they're
Um,
twins, right? They're being
yeah,
born at the same time.
yeah, it's so amazing. It's such a vibe. I love it. And yeah, I definitely foresee both of them having some very like parallel conversations and
Yeah.
intersecting conversations and interweaving similar themes and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Ooh, okay. So let's just start off with the basics, and I'll just open up the stage for you to just introduce yourself and in your own words and what it is that you do in this life and other
Beautiful.
lives, whatever comes through.
Hmm. I feel like I've lived so many lives in this singular incarnation. Um, so there's that. However, what's brought me to where I am today, there's like a few events that are, I guess, pivotal. And the biggest one, honestly, being the cocoa, the forbidden C word, the cocoa. Um, when the cocoa happened, at that current moment in time and space, I had a yoga studio in Toronto. I was the sole owner of it. I was the sole operator of it. And when you're the sole operator of something like a yoga studio, you're like the plumber, the accountant, the 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 cleaning lady. Like you're all of the things. The receptionist, the assistant, all of the roles, you're playing all the roles. And it was like brick and mortar vibes, but it was in the city, in Toronto, very expensive city. And with my operations costs alone, I was like living paycheck to paycheck. And I was also at the time, I had just quit my job as a bartender, which I had been in the, let's say, service industry for 5 years, like right out of university, right out of Queen's University. I went straight into the service industry, like the bar scene in Toronto. And I was making amazing money. Like I would come home after, let's say, a Friday, Saturday, Sunday night shift, all three of those nights, and I would have made $2,600 cash. And that was separate from my hourly wage, for example. So I was making a lot of money, but I was doing something that I fundamentally hated in that regard. And it felt very bizarre for me that I was like the owner of a yoga studio, and on one end, I'm facilitating healing for people. And then at night, I'm a bartender who is basically making money off of people's demons,
Yeah.
essentially, was how I ended up conceptualizing it.
It's like
And
you're
when that,
poisoning them and then you're like,
yes,
"Hey, come heal." That's so interesting.
it was an interesting paradoxical place to be in. Like the just juxtaposition of it was very interesting. And but when that landed in my field of awareness, that's when I was like, this can't coexist. Like
Hmm.
I choose to not let this coexist. So I have to put my all into the studio. And then that's what I did, which is when I opened the second yoga studio, which is the one that ended up, let's say, getting shut down by the government as per, the
Yeah.
whole COVID protocol for the world. Um, and that was obviously really devastating and just shattered my world because it was out of nowhere. It was like, it's
Hmm.
really funny now because I mean, I've gone deep into this whole conversation and I've found a lot of peace in everything. So it's funny for me. It's very cosmically comical to me. But it happened overnight and it was like such a shock to my system. I went from waking up from rising at 6 a.m., 5 a.m. every single day and for like 16 hours a day to just like, oh, there's like nothing to do really. Okay, we're gonna pivot now. And then for me, what I loved about teaching yoga and what I had at the yoga studio and what I felt at the yoga studio was the in the flesh community aspect of it. Like I loved that aspect of it. And when I didn't have that anymore and I had to teach yoga over Zoom and those types of things, like it just hit different and it didn't resonate with me anymore, and it felt soul sucking and it felt really depleting at that point, which was another layer of that, like, in quotations, ego death, which, you know, I don't like to actually refer to it as the ego death, but for the purposes of this conversation, at that time my awareness was like, this is an ego death. But that was another layer to it because yoga saved my life. Like genuinely, yoga genuinely saved my life. And so I'm in this moment in time and space. I'm at this crossroads where I'm like, I made the thing that I love and that saved my life, my work. And now I sort of kind of hate it and resent it. And I'm being put in this position to pivot, basically. And I'm so grateful that I was put in that position, because now I really feel like I am doing what feels so deeply aligned and so much more impactful than, I don't want to say just yoga, because yoga is so impactful and so profound, such a profound practice and philosophy. However, what I'm doing now just intertwines and synergizes so many modalities of healing and of self-mastery and self-actualization and those types of things, that it's, again, so much deeper, so much more profound. It's really hard to conceptualize fully who I am and what I do. I always struggle with this. And what I usually come back to is that I hold space for people to hear themselves, for people to see themselves, for people to hold themselves, and for people to remember their inner resources and to tap into their own inner well, of clarity, of knowing, of truth, of discernment, of their sovereignty, connecting with their voice, their intuition, and their innateness. Innateness is a big theme that I've been interweaving into my work in the last few months, especially, of really being extra intentional about how I hold space and how I facilitate to ensure that I am truly empowering my client, like truly, truly, truly. And that took a lot of contemplation and reflection about my past ways of being of service, to see where I was maybe unconsciously still not fully empowering that person to be fully in their sovereignty, because I just didn't know better in that moment in time, because my consciousness wasn't as expanded in that moment in time. And that's where I feel humility is such a pillar to embodied leadership, is having the humility to say, like, I didn't know as much then as I know now. And as much as I consider myself a master and a teacher, I'm also a perpetual student, and I'm always learning and I'm always expanding and I'm always shifting in what my approach is and what my approach is informed by and all of that. So yeah, I feel as though that sort of kind of says what I do. I'm shifting a lot more into somatic sexology work, and which feels really exciting for me and really fun and juicy. But yeah, a lot of my work is very rooted in voice activation, embodiment, somatics, and really harnessing the potential of our body and of our humanity through this body. Very grounded spirituality. And that's just a sprinkle of it.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
a
it's
sprinkle.
funny asking someone like you and someone who has that same type of vibe like me, where it's like there's so many layers to what it is that we do, and those like what we do changes every day as well, because it's almost like we're
Mm-hmm.
informed by all these other aspects of ourselves that are like we're tuning into every single day and being like, what should I do today?
Yes.
And what's good
Yes.
to do today? And so it's like hard to really nail it down, where it's in the past, a lot of people who are in even like the interfacing with the spirituality realms and helping humanity kind of approach it. It's like, I'm a yoga
Mm-hmm.
studio teacher, I'm a Reiki
Mm-hmm.
facilitator. Like, it was
Yeah.
easier to put labels on it. And even though they were still misrepresented and misunderstood within those labels,
Yes.
now we have now where it's like we're noticing the limitations of even those like previous modalities. Like for example, when you're like just yoga, and I'm in the same boat. Like yoga
Yes.
was such a transformational modality for me, but again, it's like all of those little like modalities that were created by who know like these lineages over so many
Mm-hmm.
years. It's like we're not really in that world anymore. It
Yeah.
started very much feeling the same as religion to me.
Yes.
And it was a
Yes.
great stepping stone, like going from
Mm-hmm.
really traditional religion. And then I'm like, okay, but now there's spirituality and all these, like, I can choose whatever modalities I want from all these practices. And
Mm-hmm.
now I'm like, oh no, it's all me. Like, the way to move forward now is what you were saying, like that innate wisdom that comes through, like that
Yes.
innate connection and the intuition. Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One thing
Mm-hmm.
that I love about how you show up in the world is that like how embodied your focus is, because we're both on that vibe of understanding that there's like an evolution of consciousness happening, and we're like really making basically like a quantum leap in terms of how humanity is perceiving reality, and just basically even like the fabric of how we interface with whatever is happening in our lives. But many
Mm-hmm.
people who are into this field or into this domain of knowledge, we stay up here, including me. Like something that I'm
Yes.
working on a lot, and it's of course like I'm working in more of a one-on-one container with you right now, and it's funny because it's not like a traditional coaching container. I'm helping
Yeah.
Anja with like I'm doing like VA work for her, but it very much feels like a one-on-one like container in terms of like Anja and me share like exchanging codes. But what I'm getting
Yes.
out of you, what I'm getting out of you
Mm.
is that groundedness. It's like, okay, I know there's all this stuff happening. I
Mm.
know like how to talk about multidimensionality, but like I don't know how to feel present in my body. So it's like I can have all the
Yes.
concepts and all of the understanding of what's happening on like an energetic level, but none of it matters. None of it translates into my everyday 3D life unless I'm also in my body. Oh,
Yes.
and that peace that you
Yes.
hold, that like groundedness, is just so valuable in the space.
Mm. I appreciate that reflection so much. And a reason that embodiment is such a pillar to my own personal journey and such a pillar in my work with my clients and with my community is because that's where my spirituality used to be at as well. It
Hmm.
was all in the upper chakras. It was all in the upper realms. It was so alluring for me and so perfect for a person like me who struggled with being in her body her entire life. Like it was such a tragedy and a burden for me to be in my body for the vast majority of my life. And that was proven time and time again through me struggling with anorexia and bulimia, through me struggling with ritualized self-injury for like 10 years of my life, me struggling with substance abuse, alcoholism, drug abuse. And so this type of spirituality that was deeply disembodied and super in the ether was so perfect for me and so alluring for me because I could justify it and I could glamorize it and glorify it and make it this thing that was in service to me when fundamentally in the long term it was not at all. It became very like spiritual bypassing, and I was escaping at the end of the day as well and dissociating from my body and leaving my body. And that's when I would experience a lot of things that would be considered psychic attacks, for example, because again, I wasn't fully occupying my body, which was leaving a lot of spaciousness for other things to occupy my body. And that's why embodied and grounded spirituality is so important in general. But I love what you said too about how, you know, it won't translate in the 3D realm when it's too up here, and anchoring it back down and bringing it back in. Like sometimes, for example, I know some women who are so powerful and so tapped into their medicine and their magic, and they consider themselves beings of service. And I'll see them selling something, for example, and I'm reading the sales page or like the caption to the post or whatever I'm seeing, and you know me, I can get ethereal if need be. Like I can get into those more 5D, 6D kind of spaces. And I'm reading these captions and I'm reading these sales pages and I'm like, what the fuck did you just say? That was literally a foreign language. That was a foreign language. And then I understand why you're complaining that you're broke and that no one's buying your program or your offering, because they have no idea what you're talking about. There is a complete discrepancy between the wavelength that you're on and the wavelength that the people in your community are on. And the wavelength that you're on is beautiful and it's profound. However, again, you have to anchor it back in to something more tangible for people to genuinely receive so that they can trust the mystery of your offering and then go experience all that mystical, crazy, cool shit. However, it's like, we got to anchor it back in. It's got to be contained. We got to contain the chaos. It's like any show that we've seen or movie that we've seen where there's magic involved. A big principle is learning how to contain the chaos, right? And so that's a beautiful thread to bring in here and to weave into this part of the conversation of like, that is what we do when we ground it back in, is we are containing the chaos that is our beautiful, potent magic and medicine.
Yeah. Whoa. Yeah. And it's like almost like a lot of us who are in that space of like being in the ethereal, like that's our comfort zone almost, because it's like, I mean, a lot of us have narratives around like why we're here, like why we're on the planet, etc. Like it feels like we're on, like we have this like mission consciousness associated with it, and then yet we're talking as if we're still up there and living in those realms. And then it's like you just said, it's so hard for people that we're meant to serve, because I feel like we're really here to be bridges. Like if we're accessing that type of information and we want to communicate it, the reason is not to communicate it with people who already know what the fuck you're talking about.
Yes.
The purpose of us bringing that down is to communicate it, to help bridge the realms a little bit.
Yes.
And so the challenge is in like, actually one thing that I can speak to personally is there's almost like this sense of like, oh, I don't want to taint myself with the 3D-ness of this experience. Like, I want to
Mm-hmm.
stay up here. I don't want to like get into like the like it's so 3D. Like, ugh,
Yes.
that's so like that's so old paradigm.
Oh
I don't want to
my
fucking touch
goodness.
it. um,
Yes.
yeah, and that creates that like
Yes.
separation that locks us into just speaking in those 5D, 6D, etc.
Mm.
terms because there's a part of us that
Mm-hmm.
doesn't even want to admit that we are actually human in this life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like we don't want to, again, associate with our humanness. We
Yeah.
dissociate by just staying up here, staying in the ether.
And that reminds me of the thread we touched on earlier of uh, those older frameworks of spirituality and how spirituality has been taught over the past, honestly, even I feel like it's only very recently that people are really like it clicked in like, oh, it's like me, oh, I'm the gateway. It's not this
Mm-hmm.
guru, it's not this
Yes.
modality, it's not this lineage. Like, I don't need to attach my power to these people who are so much better than me. But there's something
Yes.
even in those older traditions that purposely take you out to make you disassociate with your humanity. And even in
Mm-hmm.
religion, right? Like just the mainstream religions that still are so dominant in our world. I mean, growing up in Islam, and it's almost like there's who gives a shit about this life? Like, fuck this
Mm-hmm.
life. You're not here forever. Like, fuck it. Like, sacrifice
Yes.
yourself. And then you'll get to
Yes.
the next life and you'll get to the better life and
Mm-hmm.
the more pure and divine
Mm-hmm.
lifetime. And then you can
Yes.
embrace and embrace that. But fuck this
That's
one.
when you
Because,
can find your peace. Not
yeah.
now, though.
Yeah. And it's like disassociate,
Mm.
and traditional religion as well, like disassociate from your primal instincts. And even just in the, I mean, this is a huge coding that you hold as well, but that sensuality, that like openness
Mm-hmm.
and our, in embracing our own sensuality and our like sacral
Yes.
energies, that has just been completely cut off because it's
Yes.
dirty. Like, literally, it's like
Mm-hmm.
this thing that you humans do, this like
Mm-hmm.
weird, like, sex thing where you're like really close and it's sweaty and it's like that's so fucking gross. Like, that's not
Mm-hmm.
divine. God didn't make that. And
Yeah.
it just separates you even at in those like everyday, yeah.
Yes. Yes. It separates you from creation energy,
Mhm.
literal creation energy and creative potential. And I find with religion, for example, that you were just touching on, it's like, you know, desire is the root of all evil, for
Mhm.
example. And sensuality is evil as well or sinful as well because it's feeding the senses, it's feeding the
Mhm.
flesh. However, I find so many people cannot find balance in that faith or in that devotion of like, okay, so I'm not here to feed my flesh. However, humbling my flesh doesn't require me to starve my flesh either,
Mhm.
or to disconnect from my flesh, or to dissociate from my flesh. You know what I mean? And that's why somatic work, again, coming back to that, is so important in general because it brings it all back into your body and the purity of your body and the sanctity of your body and the holiness of your body. And when you do get to connect with your body in that profound way, you realize that anything that tells you, any faith, any practice, any guru, etc., that tells you that your body is the source of ill or the source of
Mhm.
evil or the source of your pain or the source of your burden or the source of your limitation is a fucking lie. That
Yeah.
is a fucking lie.
Ooh, yeah. And I've heard you say this a couple of times, even over the past few days. There's a phrase that you say, freedom lives in the body. And I want you
Mm-hmm.
to speak on that.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 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 yes. There's a few elements to that. So, one, our body is comprised of water, and water holds memory, water holds information, water holds intelligence, and the water is and our bodies fundamentally there it's a record keeper. It's holding, it's like, this definitely resonates with you because the Akashic record, it's a similar kind of understanding of like, my body is a record keeper and it's holding all this information. And so when I get to tap into my body, I get to remember everything that I have forgotten that disconnects me from my core self. And through connecting with that and remembering that, I get to access my liberation. And I always intentionally work with the word access, for example, rather than achieve, because like, liberation isn't outside of us, and liberation isn't something that you have to earn. It's yours. You are that. We have just forgotten that. So it's about, again, accessing it. And because I believe the body has been such a site of colonization and of domestication and of dominance, that is where the healing and the liberation is accessed as well. And coming back to the water thread, water is one of the first things that was ever domesticated by man. And because we are predominantly made of water, we are not separate from that. And so when man started diverting water into cities via pipelines or creating dams, for example, we became domesticated as well. And so it's a really cool way to look at it is like freeing and liberating your inner waters through your body. It's literally coming back into the source, as I said, like the site of the colonization, so that you can decolonize it at the site. And I believe that the way that the matrix of domination and the matrix of domestication is designed is to keep you disembodied, is to keep you disconnected, is to keep you dissociated, because the dark magicians of the world know that your body is the key, your body is the portal. And they know for as long as you're disembodied, you are disempowered and therefore more governable, more controllable, more complacent, more docile, and so on and so forth. And so there's a lot of layers to why I believe that liberation lives in the body. It's like on a deeper level, and then it's also on like a systemic level. And that's where I've found it. I remembered my liberation and my sovereignty and my innateness through my body.
Yeah. And the first thing that comes up when I hear you say that is my own experience of, it's like being born into such an oppressive reality structure where it was like, even just coming out of that and into like the greater world and being like, oh, okay, there's more layers of this, like me being governed and all these authority like levels of authority figures. But the one that I grew up in was so intimate, and so like the authority figures that were cutting me off from what I really wanted to do were like my close family members, like just people that weren't like far off government, whatever. But
yeah,
the reason I say that is like what broke me out of that, when people are like, how did you get from there to where you are now? I'm like, it was my body. It was these really prominent sensations and feelings and knowings that kept rising to the surface within my physical system. And it was in feelings, and then then I connected it, like then at one point those just like sensory feelings started connecting with my mind, and I started being able to put language to it, and it's like, okay, this is intuitive knowledge, etc. But it was
Mm-hmm.
that. It was like even when I was just it's almost like seeing me in just this black goo and not knowing
Mm.
or it's like the lights are out. You're in this like black room, the lights are out. You have no idea where you are. You're just like, well, this is reality. Like this is just how it's always going to be. Like these are always the rules. This
Yeah.
is and then there's a light that lives within your body. That's like reminding
Mm.
you that that's not the real truth and that that's not the
Mm-hmm.
real reality. And if
Yes.
you pay attention to that, it will lead you out. But then it's like that
Yes.
whole process of like, can you and this is what a lot of the work that you do I find as
Yes.
well is like that trusting that it's like okay, we
Mm-hmm.
all innately feel the sensations and the wisdoms of our body, but it's another thing to learn how to interpret those and then act
Yes.
on them in a way where you're and
Yes.
that's like the whole sovereignty piece.
Yes. Yes. There's layers. There's
Yeah.
layers. It's like one, being present enough and in tune enough and tapped in enough to hear and to listen
Mm-hmm.
and to actually, as you said, interpret or translate those messages to make them at all useful
Mm-hmm.
in your current reality, and then three, to actually take aligned action on that.
Mm-hmm.
So many layers.
Yeah.
Um, but the trusting that spark of truth, trusting that whisper of truth is such a hard thing for
Mm-hmm.
like 9 out of 10 people,
Yeah.
because most of us have been robbed of that opportunity to learn to trust it by being allowed to make mistakes,
Yeah.
and by being given the liberty and the opportunity to practice our yes, our embodied yes and our embodied no, no matter where it takes us,
Mm-hmm.
but being given the liberty and the opportunity so that we can attune our discernment to
Yeah.
recognize, like, oh, this is what this actually feels like for me in my body. Oh, this is what yes actually feels like for me. Oh, this is what no actually feels like for me. Oh, this is what a no feels like for me. That's actually a yes. Oh, this is what a yes
Yeah.
actually feels like for me. That's actually a no. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
so many layers, but it's such an unraveling, and it takes so much time to cultivate that connection and that relationship. And that, I feel, is another thing that really stifles people in seeing this journey the whole way through and fully devoting
Mm-hmm.
themselves through it, because in the culture that we live in, that is so convenient, and just the availability of everything and the accessibility of everything at the tip of your fingertip makes people really impatient,
Mm-hmm.
and they are on this, like, running on this dopamine treadmill where they're chasing that dopamine rush. And so when people don't see results right away,
Yeah.
like, fuck this, I'm taking the easy way out, or I'm going to go do that thing that I usually do to disconnect or not feel this, or whatever it may be. That's why, for example, with westernized medicine, like, so many people are resistant towards working with herbal medicine because it takes longer for it to kick
Yeah.
in. It's the same thing with somatic work. It takes longer for it to kick in. However, it is so much more profound and
Mm-hmm.
really getting to the root of it, rather than just masking the symptomology of it all and
Yeah.
making you unaware of the symptomology. It's
Yeah.
making you deeply aware of the symptomology, and also putting the healing back in your hands, in your
Mm.
own body.
Yeah. Oh, okay. There's so many things. I'm like, I could ask about this. I could ask. Um, what I want to direct this to is, I see it
Yes.
as like how you broke it down into three stages. There's like stage one of, oh, first of all, I do want to
Hmm.
highlight what we just said about intuitive knowledge doesn't always lead you to that
Yes.
result that you're perceiving in your mind. Like that,
Yes.
like, oh, okay, if I do this, then God is going to reward me or the universe is going to reward
Mm-hmm.
me because I'm such a good girl and I'm following my intuition. And it's like that's
Mm-hmm.
such a misconception, because what it's really going to
Yes.
do is it's going to take you to all of the places that you need to go again fine
Yes.
tune that discernment.
Yes.
And honestly, through
Yes.
all of the experiences that I've had where I've like followed my intuitive, like really like strong body, like just intuitive nudges, and it led me
Mm-hmm.
to a situation where I was like, I don't like being here. Coming out of it
Yeah.
and processing that, I still don't regret it, even though it was fucking
Absolutely.
uncomfortable in the moment, but it led
Yeah.
me to where I needed to go to see what I didn't yet see. Like it was
Yes.
like
And what you couldn't,
unlocking.
yeah. Yeah. And what you couldn't have seen otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. Like through
I
other
totally
people
get
could
that.
tell you, like this is a huge aspect of how I'm learning on my money journey is through
Mm-hmm.
making purchase, like we've had this conversation before, but in even like the healing work and money healing, etc., there's a lot of manipulation in selling because it's
Mm-hmm.
like we're all healing our blockage to like allowing ourselves to spend money, and then there's some people that probably unaware, like they're not intentionally doing this, but they
Mm-hmm.
hop on that and then they try to tell you like, oh, if you like spend this, like spend your entire, like we talked about this, like spend your
Yes.
entire life savings on my program and you will get to where you need to be. And it's like
Yeah.
even like as uncomfortable as doing that is, sometimes we fucking need to like spend our life savings
Yeah.
to learn
Yeah.
that lesson in a really embodied way so
Yeah.
that we can then bring the wisdom out of it and bring it back to the world and like have just
Yes.
so there's
Yes.
yeah.
That's a beautiful opportunity for you to recognize, like, why did I put this person on a pedestal?
Yeah.
I put them on a pedestal because my scarcity consciousness glorified them for having XYZ in
Hmm.
their bank account and having XYZ amount of clients and making me XYZ promise. And they actually were speaking to my scarcity. So it was my scarcity that was acting in
Yeah.
that moment in time. And oh, okay. I see
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. And
and
so it's
and that's where you get
uncomfortable.
to be grateful that
Yeah.
you put yourself in that position, because now you're going to know to never outsource your power like that and
Hmm.
to never act from a place of scarcity like that, which just put you in a position where you invested your life savings on something where you
Yeah.
probably didn't see the results that you expected to see, because again, you did it from a place of scarcity, which
Hmm.
inherently brings scarcity into the whole experience and like
Yeah.
journey, I find.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, okay, so that was one point. The second thing that I want, like, that breakdown that you had, sorry, like my structural thinking is starting to
I
land
love
back
it.
down
I
after like
love
two
it.
years of being in full
I
flow.
love it.
I love it too.
Celebrating you in that.
And yeah, this is part of like that structure is like part of me coming into my body, and I'm like, oh yeah,
Hmm.
I actually like yeah, I'm an intuitive, I'm a mystic, but I'm also a computer scientist. Like how that's so interesting.
Yes.
Like whoa. Anyway, so you broke it
Hmm.
down in terms of like the first thing is being able to receive those signals at all, those
Yes.
somatic signals,
Hmm.
those intuitive signals, and actually even be present enough to be aware that they exist. And then the
Hmm.
second step is then understanding what they're telling you and interpreting that. And then third
Hmm.
step is taking the aligned action that will get you like realign your life into where you actually need to be and like where you actually
Hmm.
like you're basically your heaven on earth reality that I love to call
Hmm.
it. But
Yes.
I find that the current society that we live in, it blocks you. I mean, I feel like most of humanity is blocked at step one because we're so
Hmm.
disassociated. And
Yes.
this is something that I really wanted to touch on this conversation is the tech piece of it all because
Hmm.
we've
Hmm.
got very interest like we've got extensive experiences with tech but in like different ways.
Yes. Yes.
And the tech piece of bringing you out of your body in such an accessible and easy and potent way. Like the fact that even over the past few years as reels and TikTok has really been popularized, this
Hmm.
new level of just getting, I literally call it like, oh fuck, I got sucked into the fucking reel vortex again. Cuz your finger,
Yes.
it's almost like you get programmed by these apps to, and you do like this is something called,
Yes.
there's a thing called dark patterns in user interface
Okay.
design where they
Okay.
use psychology and then
Mm-hmm.
to like increase the amount of time you spend on the app, etc. Like these are like intentional. Whether the people who actually coded it understood like they're in it too.
Yes.
They're caught in the web
Yes.
too. They built the web
Yes.
and they're in it too. But the fact that it's
Absolutely.
an intentional thing. But I honestly, I find myself. This is actually one of the things that I am working on the most at this moment is how like paying attention to when I get like my finger will just move on to the reels button and then I'll just fucking
Mm-hmm.
sit there for like who
Mm-hmm.
knows how long consuming random shit that I don't care
Yes.
about that pisses me off because I'm like another thing about it. Sorry, I'm just like taking up my rant on
I
reels.
love it.
The
I
other
love
thing
it.
about it is like because it's short form content, because of the trendiness of audios, like
Yes.
it's just everyone's doing the same thing. It's like
Oh
I'll
my
I'll watch
gosh.
like 20 reels of people
Yes.
with the same audio and I'm
Yes.
like where is your authenticity here? Like it
Yes.
bothers me so deeply. Like
Yes. Oh
oh
my God, as sister, I so deeply share these frustrations. Like, I'm just like, don't you feel like a
ugh.
fucking idiot constantly lip syncing these audios?
Oh
Like,
god.
but constantly. And you've probably noticed, and I've noticed this with your real game as well, is like you and I are doing totally
Yeah.
unorthodox things when it comes to reels. Like
Yeah.
completely and utterly unorthodox and just not following any trend
Yeah.
whatsoever. Like just tapping into our own channel and letting that be enough and letting that be, you know, our style. And I've found so much freedom in that, and it's been so nice for me because the reason I didn't hop onto reels for so long is because I was like, I fucking hate this. This is
Yeah.
so ridiculous. Everyone actually looks like a clown.
Yeah.
Respectfully, all my friends who do reels, I love you, but honestly, you're so much cooler than your reels.
Yeah.
You're so much
Yeah.
cooler than your reels. And as you said, where's your authenticity? You know, there's no creative, like actual
Yeah.
creative. I don't know. It just lacks depth for me. It really, really lacks depth. And then not to mention how like assembly line energy it is. It's
Oh
just so
god, yeah.
like just fast food consumption of this like as you said, half of it's just like meaningless. It's like what the fuck was that? Literally
Yeah.
actually what the fucking shit was that?
Oh my god. Yeah. Oh.
I feel
Oh god,
that.
like it literally like when you talk about somatic nudges and intuitive it like repulses me.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah,
hard
aversion.
because the programming like in the mental world, in my mental world, then there's still beliefs that I have like oh like I'm doing something unorthodox with reels. No one's going to watch it. Everyone's going to skip
Yes.
over it. And so there's like this
Yes.
pressure of like even though we both are doing
Mm-hmm.
like an authentic version of using that short form content, there's still
Yep.
all these voices in our heads like that you're doing it wrong. This isn't gonna get you anywhere. Like, and it's like, no, but I don't care. Like, unless I
Literally.
find an audio that just speaks to, there's something about lip syncing that freaks me the fuck out. Like, it's like creepy. It's like literally puppetry.
Yes, I fully agree. And like so many of them are like fucking Kim Kardashian or like and I'm just like this just feels like a whole other layer to Hollywood infiltrating our
Yeah.
lives and our consciousness and our psyche and I'm
Yeah.
not fucking here for it.
Yeah.
Like I'm just not. And I totally I know what you mean by like for me it's not about the metrics. It's not
Hmm.
about the clout. It's not about becoming uh becoming or gaining 15,000 followers in 5 days because I popped off on reels because I've seen that happen to a lot of people. I understand the allure of it, but
Mm.
again, that's not it for me. That's it's for me, I find that if you just pop off that quickly, you're going to become irrelevant just as quickly as well. You know,
Yeah.
like I'm here about cultivation, like much deeper cultivation and as we just mentioned, like we have our own way of playing with reels. However, it's you will not catch me investing hours upon hours a week on creating 7 reels a day, like how I see
Yeah.
people doing.
Yeah.
Like power to you, and do what feels best for you. But for me, I would much rather pour my energy into conversations like these,
Yeah.
and much more intimate, profound connections and community cultivation and building and
Yeah.
depth,
Depth. Yeah.
intimacy, baby. That's what I'm here for.
Yeah, there's this aspect of like the way social media is moving, and even when I started my YouTube channel in 2017, I mean, there was so much pressure to not go deep. Like I literally had people being like, "Oh, Reach, like I would actually watch your videos if they were only like 5 minutes long." And I'm like, I'm not doing.
Right.
I'm literally here talking about like the innermost journey of self. It's not going to be done in
Yeah.
5 minutes. Like we can touch
Yeah.
maybe just the surface level stuff, but that's not, like you just said, like that's not what I'm here to do. Like we're here for intimacy. We're
Absolutely.
here to again like go deep into deep into
Absolutely.
the core of our beings and like excavating all that shit out there. Like and
Absolutely.
something like go
I just
go
had a
ahead.
wild drop. I just had the I just had a wild drop in a world where we have all been conditioned to be more digestible and to value and be mediocre and to value mediocrity. Reels and like TikTok and such is such a reflection of that, making ourselves digestible and making ourselves as small
Mm.
as and as contracted and as like palatable and diluted and watered down as much as fucking
Oh my
possible.
gosh. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and the allure that you were saying about Reels is like, oh, like maybe I'll pop off, like get like 10K
Yes.
followers like in two
Yes.
days. Like, oh my God, that's
Dude, and also like I'm sorry, respectfully, all my friends who say this shit, I love you so much. But just because 15,000 people watched your reel, it does not mean you went viral, okay? In a world
mm-hmm.
of 6 billion people, I'm sorry, you need at least 1 million hits on something for it to be actually genuinely considered viral.
Oh
Like
yeah. Yeah.
genuinely, 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 genuinely. Like,
Oh, okay, yeah. I love that you say that because, yeah, we do have so many friends in these worlds that are in that web. And then the other thing is, like when it comes to like the underlying allure of something like that, like wanting to pop off on, and this is something that I
yes.
intimately feel because I've
Yeah.
been on the social media, like I want to grow my following like
Mm-hmm.
since 2017, and I started in
Mm-hmm.
2017 with a very disempowered version of myself, and I'm still unraveling all the bullshit around analytics and self-expression,
Yes.
and like being in your world actually has been really powerful for
Mm.
me because you embody that, like I'm not here for that instant hit, I'm here for like
Mm-hmm.
community building, and that like has that's like percolating in my field and
Mm.
awareness right
Love
now.
it.
There's oh, what was I gonna say? I blanked. It's gone.
Mm. It'll come back, come back.
Yeah. Oh, okay, so I
Yes.
mean, this is like scarce. It's again scarcity consciousness, and then it's like
Yeah.
this feeling of needing followers or this feeling of needing a lot of people to see your shit is another version of like you trying to be saved by other people because it's like
Yes.
okay, if I and then at the core of it, it's money again. Like for the people who are online, like expressing themselves online and also like selling offerings that honestly are like powerful offerings, but when there is that component of also selling, there's this impression like, oh, if I pop off on, if I like have 15,000, then I'll have sales, then I'll hit my 10K
Yes.
month, like then I'll do all of
Yes.
this and all this will happen for me because other people need to come into my life and save me from this
Yes.
wherever space I am. But then in
Yes.
reality, you it's like if they're coming through the reels, they're coming for that diluted version of you, and they're not
Yes.
interested in going
Yeah.
deep with you
They're
into a
probably not your
multi-dimensional
soulmate.
self-remembrance.
Yeah. They're not ready. They don't have like swimming gear ready to go into the
Yeah.
fucking depths of Mariana's Trench with you. They're here for like just like a little like bird bath in the shallow end. They're gonna dip set, trip
Yeah.
set, you know? They're
Yeah.
probably not your soulmate client at the
Yeah.
end of the day. And
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely, and that's likely why it doesn't resonate with people like you and I, because so much of our personal journey has been about claiming our bigness and claiming our
Mm-hmm.
greatness and finding comfort in the discomfort of making people uncomfortable
Yeah.
with our greatness. You know what I mean?
Oh, we
So
both
it's
have that. Man,
yes.
I tell you about how when I like probably in by the second year of my YouTube channel, I was receiving death threats. Like me, little Areege, like cutie little. I'm like,
Like
people are
what do
like,
you mean?
because, and then over that journey, it was like that was such a big part of my journey of being like okay with that. Like, yeah, some people
Hmm.
fucking hate me to the point, or they think they hate me. And it was really just, and
Yes.
including my own family. I have had a first cousin. I'm not gonna like, because they're probably listening to it, whatever. I've had a first cousin send me like, I've had family members send me more nasty messages than random strangers. And the thing
Wow.
is, it's like through that exploration, it's like you realize like well the only reason they're doing that is because
Yes.
you're highlighting that like somatic intuitive nudge within them that they are
Yes.
pushing and disassociating from and trying to like
Yes.
just pile dirt on top of, and by seeing
Yes.
us in our empowerment and like us like being like fully expressed and sovereign,
Hmm.
it just pulls that
Yes.
shit back out and it pisses them off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's like their own inner saboteur
Yeah.
trying to fuck your shit up, because it's like their inner saboteur is like, how dare you show me everything that I'm actually capable of and that I'm too lazy to take on, or I feel I'm not capable of being responsible for that. It's like, how dare you for showing me that?
Yeah.
It's like, you're fucking welcome. You're
Yeah.
so very welcome.
Yeah. And there was a
Why you
moment where
mad,
I
bro?
had, yeah, we had to, like, both of us have had that moment where we were just like, we'll embrace it. I'm here to trigger the fuck out of some people.
Yeah,
And that's
I'm so deeply
exactly what I'm
okay.
gonna do.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I love it. I guess I've just been branded in that way to trigger people, to be a walking trigger for people. I've triggered people before by not even saying anything.
Yeah.
Okay, just by existing and breathing in a space, I've triggered people before. So, I
Um,
mean,
I had this experience on the 501's streetcar two
yes,
years ago.
classic.
I was literally sitting there minding my own business, and this lady got so mad at me. She pulled my hair. Like, she literally took my ponytail and yanked it. And I had not even made eye contact with her. She was just so pissed off at just my presence there. And it was like, and
Wow.
people were, and a lot, some people there were like thinking it was like a racism thing, but I felt it. It wasn't a
Right.
racism thing.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
like, I am so, and she was, I mean, I feel for her because she was one of those people that were like really deep in the darkness of their
Yes,
lifetime.
contracted. Yeah. Yeah.
And to see me like just
Shining your
in my
light.
radiance, yeah, so
Hmm.
I feel like you relate to this too, but sometimes when we go out after doing like devoting ourselves to this type of inner
Hmm.
excavation and embodiment work full time, you go out into the world
Hmm.
and people are like looking at you different, like in a
Oh,
good,
yes.
they notice it, like you
Yes.
carry this aura around you that just intrigues people. And it, yeah, like you said,
Absolutely.
it's like she literally yanked my ponytail, and I was like, this isn't about racism. Like this is, she was just an older woman who saw me, and it triggered the shit out of her because she probably saw like a reflect again. This is your this is, like
Yes.
the fact that Anya's
Yes.
name is your mirror. This is exactly, I feel, the reason why you named it that, because it's like you
Yes.
mirror people, and if they don't
Yes.
like what they're seeing, they get triggered. And if they're
Absolutely.
intrigued by it, if they've the next step after that is like they get activated by your same, you could
Yes.
act the same way.
Yes.
There's some people that
Yes.
hate you, and there's some people that like
Absolutely.
love you, and there's some people that worship you, and you're like, don't worship me.
Don't worship me, please. Absolutely. You're right. There are those tiers. There absolutely are those tiers. And I've actually had many of my past one-on-one clients tell me so many times, like, I have followed you and unfollowed you so many
Yeah.
times in my life. You have triggered me so many times in your posts. I've I've after unfollowing you, I've still lurked you like every
Yeah.
single day, stuff like that. And they've just been so humble and honest about it, being like, you literally triggered the shit out of me. But as you said, most of the time when you realize and recognize that that person is reflecting back at you your own anger of your own unrealized potential, you step into that space of like, well, maybe if I play in proximity to that person, I can tap into that, because what they're showing me is my North Star right now. They're showing me my desire. They're
Mm-hmm.
showing me my inner compass. So maybe I should actually go more into that direction rather than feeling this like aversion or resistance towards going there. Um,
And that changes
yeah.
how, sorry.
No, no, no. Go ahead. Go ahead.
That changes like how, even just through this conversation, I'm realizing how much that realization of like that's how we actually are of service to the world. It's like changes our
Hmm.
my whole perception of social media metrics in general. And it's like that what you said. It's like I have the same thing. People will unfollow me, come back. It's like that perception that like I don't know, it just changes like my need and my perception of like needing people to follow me. And it's like actually it's
Yes.
a good thing to have people unfollow you.
Hmm.
And then cuz and
Yes.
there's this yeah. Yeah.
You're doing something right,
Yeah.
in my
Yeah.
opinion. If you're losing followers, you're doing something right, because it means that you're expressing yourself very boldly and very
Yeah.
authentically. And I genuinely, I have I've seen this, witnessed this time and time again. For every follower that I lose, I gain five.
Yeah.
Genuinely. It's literally like a spring cleaning that happens on its own organic
Yeah.
terms throughout the seasonality of just like your presence and your identity on social media. It shifts and
Yeah.
it creates space for people who are more in alignment in that moment in time and space with
Mhm.
you and your service and your offerings and all of those things. So it's all aligned, it's all divinely orchestrated. Naturally, the ego comes in though and is like, yo, I'm feeling tender right now, because especially with like the real life too and the TikTok life, which
Real
is
life. Oh my god.
yeah, yeah, which has become more prevalent now too. It's like it's really it's such a big dose of micro validation that people are getting, that it is creating again even more like reliance on this outsourcing of validation, outsourcing of our sense of
Mhm.
self, outsourcing of our value, outsourcing of our worth, outsourcing, 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 outsourcing. And so it feels like it's a dangerous zone to be in, and it has to be used with the utmost intentionality.
Yeah.
Technology in general,
Yeah.
technology in general, it has to be used in this embodied way, in this grounded
Yeah.
way. Because when you're not grounded, when you're not embodied, that's when it can start, let's say, owning you,
Mhm.
controlling you, dictating how you're making choices. And to come back to that piece of what was it called?
Dark patterns.
Uh, dark patterns. I love that you brought that in, and this is kind of weaving that back into this conversation. Is my partner the other day was mentioning how he noticed that the TikToks that have the most views and the most likes have a message generally sprinkled somewhere within it of like this for more and follow me for more,
Mm.
even if the video that you posted had nothing informative in it, or nothing of, let's say, value in it. And so he did an experiment and he incorporated these types of sentences in his TikToks, and those were the ones that by far, by like a
Wow.
thousand views or hits or whatever, it shifted that much.
Yeah.
And then he was reflecting on that, and he was sharing these sentiments with me and these musings with me. And he was like, it's so wild how much people's psychology is being controlled and how much their choice is being controlled, simply because their eyes registered like for more, follow for more, they unconsciously on autopilot literally did that, and they don't even know why. And the reason that mechanism works and the reason that psychological manipulation works is because that person is not fully in their body.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
for a
Oh my
person
God,
like
you
me,
tied that in so perfectly.
you know, because for a person like me, like when I
Yeah.
see that, I'm not aimlessly doing that. I'm like, okay, wait, was
Yeah.
there value to that? How did I feel when I consumed that content? Do I feel a resonance here? And do I feel as though I want to continue this relationship with this person, or engaging or interacting with their energy? You know, I go through a whole fucking process
Yeah.
because I'm deeply embodied, you know?
Oh,
And that's a big piece.
that's huge. Yeah. And that just ties in perfectly with what we were talking
Yes.
about before of like when people are disembodied and not here, then they're like just listening to commands and on autopilot because
Yes.
it's like their consciousness and their awareness is somewhere else doing other things.
Yes.
And so your
Yes.
body's just like, okay,
Yes.
like,
Yes.
okay, tell me what to do. It's like, anyway, I just wanted to check in with you because we're like past an
Yep.
hour.
Yep.
So I wanted to
Yep.
see how you're feeling because there is like another thing that I wanted to say. But
Yeah, I'm cool. I'm cool to flow.
okay. Whew.
Yeah.
So what okay, so now let's talk about what technology and social media can look like if we were in a reality where people were embodied. The potential, like the potentiality of what social media can like okay, even for us, like even just the fact that we are out here, it's like as much as we see all of this bullshit on social media, we're still out here posting content, we're still out here being
Yep.
visible because the world needs more embodied people utilizing this technology because it's not the
Yes.
technology innately that is fucked up. It's just that the way that we are interfacing with it and the way that people are
Yes.
programming it, it's just
Yes.
with the wrong
Yes.
intentions. Or it's not even
Yes.
wrong, it's just like ignorance,
Yeah,
really.
yeah. Not truly understanding the gravity and the power that they hold in the programming of this technology, for example, or the
Yeah.
encoding of it, or the creations of the algorithms and those types of things.
Yeah.
So are we like we're playing with hypotheticals here? Like,
Yeah.
how do I feel that the fusion of humanity and technology in the most idyllic way, how do I feel
Yes.
it could serve humanity? Okay,
Yes.
perfect. So I love this question. And I do believe that, just like how I believe this about money, for example, that when money is put in the right hands, and I know that let's use right softly and make it italicized or like put it in quotation marks, because I know that conceptualizing what is right is a whole other ballgame, and that's a very nuanced conversation. But just like how I believe that when money is put in the right hands, that it will benefit the world, I do believe that when technology is put in the right hands, and that when people with good intentions and pure hearts are operating technology and programming it, that it can benefit the world. I do truly believe that. However, as you mentioned, we're in a place in the present day where I feel that the majority of people who are controlling technology do not have the most beneficial intentions for the masses. I do believe that that will shift over the course of the next few years, and especially moving into like the next decade and such. But something that was really cool that I saw recently that inspired me to recognize the ways that technology can support us more moving forward is, for example, I saw this NFT community where it's a classic type NFT community, but there's this aspect to it where this NFT project is essentially funding the building of a retreat center for this NFT community so that they can all come together and unplug from the matrix and be together in the flesh and connect in the flesh together. So it's essentially through this technology, they are being enabled to live in this communal lifestyle where they all get to thrive together. And they all get to live in wealth and in luxury and have these resources available to them, and to have their own farmland and those types of things, where let's say they can access some sort of sovereignty from the system, if you will. And so seeing that, I was like, fuck yeah, I love to see that. That is so powerful to see that money can be circulated in those ways, and that communities can be cultivated in those ways now, and that, again, technology can potentiate that reality. And another way that I've been reflecting, for example, on how technology, I feel, will support us in the future is with farming and agricultural practices. And because something that I'm noticing, and this is by design, this is all by design to perpetuate the advancement of the technological era, if you will. So it's all like to line these things up for this advancement. But I do believe that, for example, like our grandparents' generation, I find, was the last generation of like true farmers, for example, like stewards of the land, where they genuinely were cultivating the land and they truly lived off the land. And now our generation has absolutely no idea, in general, has absolutely no idea of what this little flower is over here. Better yet, how to crop rotate and nourish the soil back to life after a season of harvesting and all of these other things, right? And so in a lot of ways, moving forward, we are going to rely on these types of technologies to take care of agriculture and cultivating the land, in the sense of like for labor, like actually harvesting the crop and like picking it and bringing it together. Because, for example, Serbia is one of the biggest exporters of raspberries in Europe. And this summer, basically all of the raspberries in Serbia went to waste. They became rotten because they weren't picked in a timely fashion, because there was no one who wanted to pick the raspberries. And they were offering 40 euros an hour, which in Serbia is like amazing. That's even amazing by Canadian standards. So in Serbia, that's and that to me is telling me a story that we are living in a time and in a generation where like people don't give a fuck about that kind of stuff. They have Uber at their fingertips, and where they can literally order a full-blown meal. They can order their groceries to their doorstep. You know what I mean? And so I do believe that technology will be brought into the agricultural industry to basically take over the manpower to bring food from a farm to a table effectively.
Yeah. And that touches on, that brings up this idea, going back to embodiment and being out of body. The tech, like where we're heading societally with everything that's happening in technology, and like you said, like automation, right? Like that's really what you're pointing to, like automating these. It's allowing us to live more out of body than we've been. Like in the past, like when you said like our grandparents, like they're truly having to interface with the land themselves in order to survive.
Literally.
They did not have the freedom to just live in the virtual world. Like so many, it's like, and especially now, like I literally live most of my life on the virtual world, and I hate it because, and this is what we touched on in our Coronation Academy call yesterday, it's like I think it was Devin. She was, I'm not gonna obviously share details, but
Of
there was
course.
just this grief associated with like I don't have people like I don't have community,
Yes.
physical in the flesh community around
Yes.
me. I have people that I speak to online, and this is the same for me. It's like I'm literally here in my like alone. And I
Mm-hmm.
have all of these like I have a whole community and a whole like thriving friendship group and like
Yes.
sisterhood relationships virtually, but it's all in the intangible realms.
Yes.
And so I think that like there's a part when you say like freedom lives in the body, there's a core part of us I think that misses that greatly. Like that
Yeah.
and then coming back into her body and doing the somatic work and what you were even sharing on your stories yesterday about like being on the island that you're in Croatia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hvar,
Yeah.
and you're learning about the plant kingdom of that region and your ancestry
Mm-hmm.
and like all of these codes are dropping because you're there and it's
Yes.
opening up these like spaces within you that allow you to I don't know, be more present. Like there's like
Mm-hmm.
a feeling. I think that's what I'm trying to get at is that even though there's like all these technological advances happening and whatever, we still at a core level of ourselves, as long as we have these human bodies, we will crave that sensory experience.
Yes.
And what I wanted to say, like to kind of turn this into a little bit of optimistic perspective,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like when you think of the concept of freedom and our ability to be free, we are the limitations are dissolved and then you're opened up to both the light side and the dark side. So as we
Mm-hmm.
like move forward and things become more automated and it becomes easier for us to be out of body, we still have the choice to be in body, but it's almost
Yes.
easier now because then it's like the with the automation and all of that stuff we're taking away the things that we don't actually want to feel and sense. I mean, it's
Mm-hmm.
obviously like there's a nuance in that too because like
Mm-hmm.
feeling and
Yes.
building up resiliency to discomfort is important,
Yes.
but there's with
Yes.
the freedom that technology brings in, we do have a chance to be embodied in a more I don't know, like in the best way that's ever been possible on the planet.
Yeah.
You know, but it's
Yeah,
something
for
that we have to
sure.
choose, which is it's not given
Yes.
to us. Like that's what a lot of people I think are worried about. It's like given this chance, like humanity's probably just gonna probably choose to stay in the virtual realms and the metaverse and whatever. But then I have hope because there's people like me and there's people like you and
Yes.
our journey was initiated through actual like real life experiences that
Yes.
like it's not like and I mean and I trust that that seed lives within every single human being.
Yes. Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
there's this like future projection that I hold where it's like yes, like all of these technological it like what's the word? Advances are going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. Like we can't stop like it's
No,
going.
it's
Like we
inevitable.
literally
It's
can't
it's
stop it.
imminent. We have
Yeah.
to flow with it. We have
Yeah.
to. That's
Yeah.
just that's the
But
trajectory we're taking.
yeah, but like you just said about the NFT project, it's like it opens up these opportunities to create our
Mm-hmm.
realities in a way that we didn't have access as easy of access to before.
Absolutely.
And that excites the shit
Absolutely.
out of me. At the same time,
Absolutely.
kind I mean I still hold that like worry, but then I'm
Mm-hmm.
like okay, well, it's not other people are not my responsibility and I trust the innate seed.
Yes. 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 Absolutely. Absolutely. That's literally all we can do. And the vision that you're projecting outward carries weight and it carries charge, and it's important that there's people who hold the vision that we can use technology in a way that will not further enslave humanity and further
Mm-hmm.
domesticate humanity, but will actually really enable us to optimize our human potential even more.
Yes, exactly. You
Mm-hmm.
summed that up so well.
Mm.
Oh,
Mm.
I feel like that's a really good place to end, to be honest.
I love it. I love it. We really brought it back in real nice.
I love that.
Real nice.
Yeah. Moral of the story. Embodiment is freedom.
Yes.
And
yes.
I echoed that like very strongly. Like the more that I root down into my humanness, the better my life becomes, because it's like about being able to translate what the fuck's happening up here. And who cares about the intellectualism? Who cares about the like mysticism if you can't actually apply it to what is happening in the here and now?
Exactly. Yeah, we always hear knowledge is power. I'm like, no, it's not. Applied knowledge or applicable knowledge, which needs to be made applicable, is power. AKA, as you said, translating it in a way where it's like it can be relevant on this plane, in this dimension.
Yes. Because we're here and we chose to be here.
Yes.
For a reason. And even if we're disconnected from that reason, we're still here. So we chose to be here.
Exactly.
At some point.
We chose everything. We chose everything about our existence. We chose our hair color, our skin color, our ethnicity, our race, our everything. We literally chose everything. And there's liberation in that.
Yeah. It's like, I read this thing yesterday. It's like seeing the human experience as a cosmic playground. And that's what this is. And it can be so triggering for people to hear that. Like, what do you mean I chose my skin color? You think I fucking chose this life? It's like, actually, sorry.
That's exactly what I'm telling you.
Yeah.
It can be triggering for sure, but lots of hard pills to swallow on the path to sovereignty. Lots of hard pills to swallow. Lots of being really deeply honest with yourself, where identifying with victimhood is really fucking convenient for you and in ways comfortable for you. However uncomfortable it may be as well.
Yeah. Because on the other side of that discomfort is like a new level of bliss, I find, every time.
And meaning.
And it's
purpose.
Stable. It's stable and it's sustained, and you're like, no one can fucking take this feeling away from me.
It's integrous. It's you. It's yours. That's why.
Okay. I love you. I just had a throwback to our IG live where someone was like, what? I don't understand what you guys are talking about.
And we laughed for literally 5 minutes straight.
Yeah. So funny.
So fucking good.
Okay, I love you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Yes, my absolute pleasure. So excited to hear it.
Me too.
Let me know if you need anything from me at all or whatever, and I'll send you the bio and all that good stuff. Thank you so much. Have an amazing day.
Have a good night.
I love you so much.
Say hi to Rob.
I will, and I know he says hi, and say hi to Garrett.
Okay. Love you. See you.
Love you.